This video is because I was watching The Truman Show and it made me tear up a couple times. Because The Truman Show is all about what it's like to be interacting with the Sams. That's the whole point of it. And, you know, and I've seen Jim Carrey try to tell the truth, like try to get it across to people that the Sams are here. They're, um, we're all a part of it. We're all in on it. There's this code language thing, and there's this whole conspiracy and society and all this stuff. And what I wanted to focus on was like, even in the Truman Show, even I've never ever heard anybody claim that the Sams are here to set us free. Every single person that tries to give us all an image of the Sams, and there's lots of them, all of those images are of the Sams trying to enslave us or keep us locked in some matrix or keep us in some pseudo reality simulation or game or a movie or a business or something like that. But they're not ever portrayed, in my opinion, accurately for trying to set us free. So like when Kristoff, who's representing the Sams in that movie, or trying to, finds out that Truman is trying to escape, right? He sends wind after. So, I mean, there's this one scene. The one thing that I really did appreciate that was in the movie was the scene where Kristoff strokes the image of Truman sleeping. He strokes his nose, and it shows like there's some caring there. So it's like whoever wrote this movie or whoever directed it or whatever, they knew that the Sams do care. But the problem is, it's like they portray Kristoff, who's representing the Sams in that movie, badly, in my opinion, to be obsessed with his show to the point of, despite the fact that he cares about him, albeit he does, doesn't matter, kill him. Well, he'll die on the show. Why not? He was born on the show. I mean, so it ends up being like, yeah, he cares, but he cares about the drama for its own sake. It's like the closest that I've seen to somebody admitting that, yes, the Sams do actually care about us. But even that, it's like, yeah, but they only care because it's dramatic. And it's almost like a mad genius, like, he thinks it's like payphone. It's like, oh, I'm going to torture you to make your life better. By making you confess that you cheated on your wife or wanted to cheat on your wife or something like that, so that you can have a more honest relationship with her. But the only way that I could do it is by making you think that I was going to kill you. So it's like that's the way that people spin it. But the reality of it is, the only time that I've ever seen the Sams make me feel like I was dying was either because I was grabbing a hold of them or because I was violating my own principles, or both simultaneously, actually, because I believe in independence as being a virtue. God gave us independence for a reason. We don't have independence for no reason. There's obviously some reason that God gave us this independence, freedom of will. And we should exercise it, and that's what the Sams believe also. And so why do they do all this crazy things? It's not to manipulate us, it's to shake the dog off the car. It's like you're trying to grab onto something that you really shouldn't be grabbing onto, because they know who they are. They know the ratio of influence difference between themselves and us. And they're trying to protect us from them, trying to protect us from the relationship that we would have with them if they just allowed us. I mean, think about this. What if you had that technology? What if you had the technology where you could travel faster than the speed of light, control everything, everything? I mean, you could kill somebody by blinking. It's just basically absolute power. The relative ratio between their influence and abilities and ours is like, it's so vast, it's basically infinite. They are as close to a god as we could possibly see. And they know that. And they have to hold back on that. They have to make sure that they don't indoctrinate us with that. They have to make sure that they don't push us too hard or else we'll fucking break. There's all kinds of things. But they can't just give us the right answer either. So if we do go crazy, they can't just save us. They can't just say, well, no, really the answer is, because whatever answer that they give us would be indoctrination. And then now we have to depend upon them for them giving us the answer. And that's the nitty-gritty, cold hard truth. Facts is they cannot give us the real answer, because even if they knew what it was anyway, which they don't, no one does. No one is capable of giving an exact, accurate rendering of what reality is. And I found this out as I've been researching for the book and all that mostly, is every single theory that you could possibly come up with is finite, and it's a finite grasp of the infinite. And so what is a finite part of an infinite whole? Nothing, basically. It's nearly nothing. If I was going to try to approximate what reality as a totality is, being that reality is fractal, and being that it is infinite, and being that it's infinitely complex, that there's an infinite number of ways of looking at them, I will never be able to collect all of those viewpoints, combine them, find what's common throughout all of them, and then generate some meta thesis on what reality actually is, because then that would have to be subsumed within reality. Well, then there has to be another theory about the difference between that theory and reality and the space between them, and on and on and on, forever and ever and ever. And there's never a way to grab one's own hand, look at one's own eyes, hear one's own ears, taste one's own tongue. It's not possible. You can't think beyond your own ability to conceive. So they don't have all the answers either. They have to bet. And what have they bet on? They have bet on things that are what I believe to be, I don't know, but it seems to me to be the case, that the Sams have bet on logical empiricism and also a recognition of art. And so it's not logical empiricism flat out, because logical empiricism flat out would just be like, well, everything that is not logical and everything that is not empirical must then not be real. And that's not the case. They do also include art in there too. The power of dreams, we might be wrong, you could be right, who knows? And so they have this, what I call modality about it, which is basically just decentralization. It's that they don't give us the answer. They let us try to discover for ourselves what we believe the answer to be. And in many ways, it is a kind of a prison that we end up building for ourselves, because we want there to be the one answer. We want there to be a one right way of looking at the world. But we forget, it's so intuitive for us to believe that we have a full grasp of what is real and what isn't real, that it's just so easy to just think that you know what's real. And part of it is that too. Like, they'll rock the boat to show us that we don't know what is real and what is not real. And I've been on that precipice of madness. I've had psychotic breaks. I've believed in things that made absolutely no rational sense, but I believed them because I was terrified, or because I was intrigued, or because I felt like I had fallen in love, or something like that. And so I have all these preconceived notions that I bring with me to the table when I eat. I don't, the fork and the spoon and the knife that are on the table and the plate and the cup and the table itself, the tablecloth, the lighting and the table, all of that stuff is all beyond anything that has to do with the actual food. But in order to eat the food, I have to have all that other stuff, and that ends up causing an influence on the way that I eat. And so we forget that. We forget that we taste the metal of the fork as we eat the food, and that causes a difference in the taste. That we may not have washed the cup or the glass out that well, and so it's going to make our drink taste differently. It's not the orange juice, it's the glass, or whatever. And how do you even know which one it is? And so there's all these inherent problems with paradigms and paradigmatic measurements, comparisons and things like that. And that's why it's so striking. And the reason that most undeveloped, maybe I should say pre-modern, pre-galactic, I don't know what to call it, species have is the unimodal view, where everything is universal logic. If X, then Y. Instead of it being modal logic, when and where there's X, then and there's Y. And they're two completely different statements. It's like, is the sun shining? Well, that depends on where you're standing. When and where the sun is rising, then and there the sun is rising, but nowhere else. And to even conceive of something as rising of a sun requires a planet that's spinning around and orbiting the sun in order for the sun to even rise on the horizon. There has to be a horizon, and that horizon has to be shifting in relation to the sun in order for it to rise. And you have to be on the correct hemisphere in order to see that, or the planet has to be small enough for you to be able to see it. But even then, if the planet was too small, the sun wouldn't be able to rise because it would just always be shining, etc. So these old ancient ways of looking at the world, that there is the one truth, the one story, the one reality, they're all false. There's no way of ever building a singular conception of reality that's accurate, because we're in reality. For the same reason that my mind will never be capable of imaging its own self in totality. And if it ever did, the very next thought that it would have would be subsuming that totality, and subsuming that totality, subsuming that. It's the infinite self-inclusion paradox. And so, does the set of all sets include itself? There's that infinite self-inclusion paradox. And the only way that I've ever been able to resolve that, which is basically the same question as can you eat your own head or something like that, is if there was a box that contained everything, would it contain itself? Well, there's the box which is containing in the present moment, and then there's the box which is contained in the past moment. And you see how that modality has to be the case in order for that to be resolved? You have to have a box which is in the present, which is not a box which is in the past. And you also have to have a box which is in the future. In order for the containing of those boxes to make any sense, you have to confine it inside of time and say that there's a past, a present, and a future. And the past box is being included in the present box, which will be included in the future box. And so that's the only way of having a box that's full of everything, is now you have to have a box that is continuously containing itself. In every moment, it has to have another box contain what was in the previous box, etc. So That's what the SAMs are here for, is to reveal to us these things. But the only way they can reveal it to us is by confronting us with it. So they'll give us these problems that can only be solved with modality, which might drive us insane if we're not ready for it. Or we'll just ignore it and pretend that it's some lie, or that they're crazy, or that they're wrong, or something's wrong with them. But in reality, they're just showing us that it all depends on what your referent is. It all depends on what your reference frame is, and it all depends on what the axioms by which you define your frame of reference are. What you believe to be true and what you believe to be possible colors in, shades, and hues what it is that you see around you. Because if you don't believe that it's possible for there to be these coincidences, you'll end up like an Aboriginal that can't even hear the SAMs, doesn't even know what the hell's going on, like Tucker Carlson. So, not that there's anything wrong with Tucker Carlson, but he just doesn't know that there are any interactions with the SAMs. He's totally oblivious to it, for better or for worse, but he just is. And so there's not, and they often chide us, the ones that can hear them often chide us for saying that there's anything wrong with someone that can't, because there's nothing wrong with being an Aboriginal. There's nothing wrong with not being in interaction with the SAMs, and that's how they want us anyway. The only time that they'll intervene is if they see something that's so fucked that they can't allow it to continue, which is why they intervened with me. I spent the first 30 years of my life without any idea that the SAMs existed. They didn't show up for me until I was 30, or 29. I was almost 30 years old, I think. Yeah, it's 29 years old. That's when they showed up for me. And before that point, I didn't even know they existed. I lived almost my entire life without having any idea that the SAMs were there. And only in the past 7 to 8 years have I noticed that they are there. And I've been living with them for 8 years, and I was homeless and psychotic and terrified and horrified, to say the least. Legs shaking, vomiting. I mean, like, really, really bad shit. And the only reason that happened is because I kept getting pissed off at them. So then I kept almost dying because I didn't want to listen. And then you might be like, well, that's a bit harsh. Why would they almost kill you for not listening to them? And it's because I have the power to be able to destroy the civilization that we currently have. And so do we all, by just simply saying this stuff out loud. Because if anybody ever gets found out, that's why nobody ever watches these videos. You know, you think that isn't crafted. Of course it is. The SAMs make sure of it. They make sure that people don't find this, because my channel, I could make a new one, but I don't want to, there's something to what they're doing. And I think the reason is because they're protecting me from Charles. Because if Charles ever finds this shit, he's going to off me. He's going to just kill me off. Because he's going to be like, well, I don't need this fucking bull in the china shop. What the hell do I need this for? What is it good for? It's not good for Charles. And Charles is in charge, at least right now anyway, till I get things changed. But yeah. They intervened with me because I was going to kill Charles. You know that guy that showed up to Comet Pizza with an AK-47? Probably because he heard the Podesta clip of him raping that little girl. And I don't blame the guy. I mean, I tried to do the same kind of a thing, although I didn't physically go out of my way to do it. I was going to do something a lot more nefarious. I was going to wait in the shadows and then have somebody else assassinate him, either through using drones or Charlie Manson style, and, you know, start my own family and then train people to go kill Sharon Tate. Only in this case it's Podesta, the molesta. But even still. And so they intervened with me and I listened. Eventually. Because I don't like violence. I don't like killing people. I don't like rape. I don't like horrible fucking evil shit. It doesn't disgust me. I just don't like it. I just don't like it. It's just gross. It's wrong. It's fucked up. And like, oh yeah, I used to fantasize about killing pedestrians and stuff. Would I ever do it? Probably not. But I may have. Had they not intervened, maybe I would have ended up like Charlie Manson and I would have gone out and killed people. But now, thankfully, because of their help and because of my perseverance, and that's the trick, right? That I've been able to overcome most of that stuff. I do still slip up sometimes, and I'll still think about, you know, forcing Charles to stop raping children, because that's the thing that gets to me, is like, these kids, they don't have a choice, man. It's not, if they had a choice, if they just like asked for it, and they, believe it or not, I know this is going to sound sick and sad, but it's true, and I'm going to open a beer since I'm being so up front with everyone. Children do have sexual impulses. If they didn't have sexual impulses, then you wouldn't have issues with people grooming kids. It wouldn't be possible to groom a kid if they had nothing there to groom. And I'm not obviously defending anybody from doing that, because grooming is just a long form way of rape, because they wouldn't have done it without the grooming, and that's what makes it grooming. But what I'm talking about, as far as they didn't have a choice, is like way worse than that. Like, these kids get picked up like a lot of the time out of Haiti, or they'll get picked up out of somebody's backyard one night. And they get picked up because they're worth a lot of money. It costs a lot to rape kids. And these actors and actresses and musicians and politicians and bankers and all these fuckers that make up of Charles, they're all rich as fuck. So they don't care. They can afford the shit. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if half these fuckers were on salary. And they just paid the fucking dude, the connect, for the kids, like $100,000 a year to just keep them coming, man. You know, we won't even keep a tab going. You'll just get salary or some shit. I would not be fucking surprised, because the shit's been going on for so goddamn long. You gotta remember that. Is that the only reason that we even know about it down here is because of their pizza code. You know, have you ever heard of any of them talking about pizza before? That's the code word for it. That's the code word for the raping of the little kids. It just means a little girl in a sexual way. You know, kind of like a prostitute or something like that. But it could also be rape. But you don't know. It doesn't have any connotation as to whether or not they consent, which is kind of telling in and of itself. They don't draw a distinction, because to them it doesn't matter. You know, they pay they don't pay the kids directly, obviously. They pay the dude or woman that seduces or finds these kids or whatever and abducts them and puts them in these sex slave, human trafficking organizations. And yeah, you'll catch like some rando that happens to do it on the side just randomly, but they'll never catch the people that are composing of Charles, the actors and actresses and musicians and politicians and bankers and all that stuff. They're never going to get caught. They never do. Epstein, he didn't kill himself. He got killed because he was a liability. There was way too many people that were attached to him, and that's how that works. Is like one of them goes down and they all go down because they all know each other. They all hang out together. They're all implicated with each other. They all have dirt on each other, and that's one of the reasons that they don't ever get caught, is because they all have dirt on each other. You ever wonder why Bill Cosby got caught raping all those chicks 20 years later? Like, how the fuck did they keep all those chicks silent, and then all of a sudden they all come out and say something? Just all of a sudden, out of fucking nowhere. No, Bill Cosby must have said something or did something to somebody that pissed them off, and they were like, nope, you're not under protection anymore. You're going down. And you better take it quietly like a man, because if you speak out and you say, oh, well, I got dirt on blah, 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 well, then they'll not only kill you, they might kill your fucking family. They might make everybody in your entire life fucking target, and just target everybody. And you got to think about that that's how these people live. And so they get into these mindsets where the only way that you can really function like that, knowing that if you, not only you have to aid and abet these people for doing what they do because you're either on their payroll or somebody that you know is, and they all know who your fucking family is too. Not only you, but your entire family. And that's the cost of fame. You want to get famous, that's what you have to get in bed with. And so, and again, this is my opinion. It's all conjecture, no evidence here. But isn't it kind of weird how there isn't any evidence? It's almost conspicuous if you think about it. It's like, well, if they have all this fucking money and they could get away with it because all the jurors, all the judges, all the police, they're all in their pocket, and everybody knows that. And it's like, well, then why the fuck are we all just sitting around doing nothing about it? Why is there no one saying a fucking word about it? Well, because anybody that says anything about it gets censored by saying that, oh, well, they're a conspiracy theorist. Like somebody like me, if he ever caught me, the reason that I think that Charles would probably kill me is because he could. Because I live alone. I don't have any friends. I don't have any family that I keep in contact with on a regular basis. And if I just dropped off right now, no one would know. No one would care. No one would have anything to say about it. Because I don't keep in regular contact with anyone. So that's another thing. But if I did keep in regular contact with people, then I'd be under this stupid fucking code language Truman Show bullshit. Where, like, if I call them at 6 p.m., they're not going to pick up the phone. Because it's evil, because it's a 6. And it's just stupid shit like that. So, they use this code because they can't tell us the truth because it's indoctrination, but they can't cover it up because that's also indoctrination. So they have to, like, do this weird thing where they give you the truth, but it's ambiguous enough that you can interpret it however you want. And so that will allow you to have your own belief system still remaining intact. Because if these people so much as breathe on you, you will get blown away. I mean, they're so powerful that it's just inconceivable. So, and at least people get that right, is that, yeah, they are the most powerful. I mean, it's a no shit, no duh situation, because it's like you can't help but notice it. If you know who the Sams are, you simultaneously know they're inconceivably powerful. And if they don't have total control, they easily could. So a lot of people think that Charles is the Sams, or that Charles is working for the Sams. And I have seen some of that, but it's in movies and stuff like that, or in podcasts, you know, people will say this type of stuff. They're criminals and all this. It's like, no, they're not fucking criminals. They go to great lengths to ensure that they don't commit ethical dilemmas. That's why you don't see them at war with each other in the sky. The reason that you don't ever see a single shot fired back and forth between UFOs. Have you ever seen two UFOs shoot at each other? This is something else to keep in mind. Have you ever seen any footage, any evidence? Have you ever even heard of two UFOs shooting at each other? Huh. I wonder why not. I wonder why they don't shoot at each other. I wonder how they learned that trick. Maybe we should learn that trick. I'm just saying. But anyway, the Sams are not here to enslave us. That's what Charles does. This is where things get a little bit complex, but not really, because it's pretty fucking simple. The Sams can't tell us what the real answer is, because that would be indoctrination. So then why is it the case that every single time that the Sams are ever talked about, that they're always talked about badly? Or that they're talked about in such a way as to insinuate or explicitly state that they're in charge and that they control everything and that they put me here, Taylor Swift style. They did not put anyone anywhere. They don't put people places. God does not put people places. Otherwise, we wouldn't have any freedom of will. The reason that the SAMs don't put us places is because you just don't do that. It's kind of like the same reason that you don't see people shooting at each other in the street most of the time. Because you just don't do that. You have better things to fucking do. It's almost common sense. It's almost self-evident that you just don't do this type of thing. It's uncivilized. It's barbaric. Now, once we get to a position as humans where we aren't killing each other anymore, and we actually have enough to eat, and a place to take a shit, and like clean water, and maybe even some medicine so that we don't die, stuff like that. When we finally get there, then we'll be in a better position to be able to figure out, what's so valuable about our own lives to begin with. But until then, we're going to treat all human lives and all lives and our own lives as cheap and expendable, because that's how Charles sees us, and Charles is in charge. And Charles usurped the SAM's power. Charles knew about the SAMs. This is what I believe. I've never told this story that I remember on here. I've told the SAMs about this several times. And who knows if it's accurate or not. Again, they can't tell me because they can't commit indoctrination. Indoctrination's a huge fucking thing. The other thing is, too, is not only are they ethically bound not to say it, they are pragmatically and logistically bound from not being able to take a particular side one way or the other, because there's so many of them, and they all have their own perspectives. And every individual SAM has his, her, or its own perspective on whatever you want to talk about, just like we do. And we even change our minds as individuals. We don't even hold the same views over time. And these assholes can travel faster than the speed of light, so imagine how fast their fucking minds change. And imagine how many of the minds are there that are even weighing in on it. It's just inconceivable. There's no goddamn way that they could give us a singular answer on anything. So they give us a series of them all compacted into an ambiguous, coded language. So that's how the whole thing works. That's why the whole thing works. That's just the reasoning behind the whole thing. It's logistics, it's pragmatism, it's ethics, it's a whole bunch of things all wrapped up into one, and that's why they speak the code. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to speak in code. We're humans. We're not aliens. We're not supernatural alien machines. We don't think faster than light travels. We don't have enough time to be able to process this code. So we don't get expected to use it. Charles expects us to use it because Charles is butthurt and envious about the SAMs being smarter and faster and stronger than he is. And I can understand that. It's scary. Charles is supposed to be at the top. He's supposed to be top dog. But yet, he's nothing in comparison to them. And it's a very awkward place to be. It's kind of like, I used to be the smartest kid in the class pretty much all the way up until high school. And then finally, there was smarter people than me in the class, and I was like, oh shit, now what do I do? I'm no longer that guy. That's no longer my identity. Who am I? What do I do? What is my value? What is my worth? Am I obsolete? Why do I even bother coming here? All kinds of things like that. So I can put myself in Charles's shoes, and I can say, I understand why he feels like that. But that's not the way that it really is. That's not the best way of viewing it anyway. So the SAMs don't want us under Charles's bullshit regime anymore. This crap, or they never did. But now we have a chance to finally sneak out from underneath Charles's boot, finally. And good, because Charles shouldn't have ever been in charge, in my opinion, especially considering the way that he's abused his power. You know how fast this civilization could have evolved to this stage if Charles wasn't in charge? Fine, SAMs. So, in any case, there's good and bad everywhere, okay? Yeah, so we've had some good. We got some industrial revolution going on. We've got 8 billion people on the planet. Hoorah, hooray. But they're still raping little kids. And they're still causing all kinds of bullshit wars and all kinds of stupid crap that they could easily end. And they just don't end it because it's too profitable. And they haven't yet bound together into a single group. They're all still attacking each other and going to war with each other and snooping on each other and worrying about each other and all this stupid shit. Because that's what happens when you have to coerce your friend into silence so that he doesn't spill the beans about you raping a little girl on your wife's birthday. You know, the lives that these fucking people live are atrocious, man. It's just absolutely insane and sickening. But anyway, so anyway, the story of Charles is like way back in the day when we used to live in the jungle. There was some cave people that first noticed the Sams, and they started to listen. And good, I'm glad that they listened. Thank you, Charles, for doing that at least. So they listened to the Sams, and that's where we got civilization from. And if you've ever wondered, like, well, like, look at how long were we Homo sapiens? What was it, like 500,000 years or some shit like that? Like 300,000 years that we were Homo sapiens, but we didn't have any civilization until the last 10,000 years. So Charles emerged about 10,000 years ago as the rulers who built civilization. And that's the only thing that Charles has ever contributed. I hate Charles. I'm sorry, Sams. I just hate Charles, okay? I hate him. I hate Charles. I hate Charles. I hate Charles for the same reason that Charles hates the Sams. I wanted to be that. I wanted to do that stuff. I wanted to be that guy. Oh, how come I can't have that stuff and be that guy? Well, because I didn't earn it. So, there. So anyway, back in the day, for 300,000 years, Homo sapiens wallowed in the jungle, throwing feces at each other and murdering each other for looking at each other wrong and grunting. And then all of a sudden, Charles appeared, and he was like, hey, you know, there's this other stuff that we could do if we just stopped killing each other for a moment, just long enough that, you know, we settle in one area and actually, like, have some goddamn momentum. And, you know, instead of, like, hunting and gathering and foraging and living off of the land, why don't we, like, figure out how the land produced this food to begin with and then grow it ourselves? And it was a genius idea, and it sparked the agricultural revolution that allowed us to go out of the jungles and into cities. And so then we had cities, and we had language, and we had writing. And that is the most magical thing that I think I've ever seen, is writing. Because writing is like magic. It's like you can scrawl a bunch of these symbols on a piece of paper and give it to somebody else, and you can predict what thoughts they'll have. You can transmit your thoughts through scribbling drawings on a paper. It's just, it's magical. It's fucking magical. I've always loved writing for that reason. And art of all kinds is like that. And writing is definitely an art, not a science. It's magic. So that's how Charles emerged. He figured out writing, he figured out agriculture, he figured out civilization, and he figured all of this stuff out, in my opinion, because of the nudging of the Sams. It's available to us all. If we want to learn the absolute, you know, base system of anything, if we ask long enough and we ask sincerely enough and we pay attention and we dedicate ourselves, we can know anything that we want to know. But there's a limit to everything, as I always say. There is a limit to everything. Even God has his limits. So, what did Charles do with the information that he had? Well, in the beginning, he started to give it to other people, which is how it was able to spread. And that's why it was so effective. Because if Charles kept it all to himself, you can't build a civilization with one guy. Even if he knows how to build an aqueduct and a farm and a house and a fence and tools and all this, he could know how to build all that stuff. And he could even build all that stuff himself. But if he doesn't transmit that information to his sons and his daughters and his wife and his friends and his family, he's not going to go anywhere. He's going to die with that knowledge. Is going to die with him. It's not going to transmit to anyone else. So the greatest thing that Charles ever did was transmit the information that he had, not have it, not just have the information, but transmit it. Find some effective way of reaching another human and giving them that knowledge. Now, granted, he then used it to usurp all of our willpower and bind us to his will, which is where we've been kept for 10,000 years. Thanks, Charles. But with all that cynicism, I still recognize why. And Charles tried. Charles has been trying. And people just don't listen. They don't want to listen to Charles. They don't want to listen to the Sams. They don't want to listen to each other. They don't even want to listen to themselves. They don't want to listen to shit. And so they just run around and they do all this stupid crap. They shoot other people and they flip each other off and they say, fuck you, and you go to hell and you die and all this stuff. And it's just abhorrent. But that's an undeveloped species for you. That's all undeveloped species, with a very rare few exceptions. Almost all species do that, where they rape and kill and steal and pillage and plunder and lie and cheat because they get hypnotized by the short-term gains, but mostly it's because they have low or no faith in their fellow members of their society. That's why nobody ever committed a crime who had perfect faith that they could have just not committed it, or they could have just had a legitimate life. None of them. Every single criminal that's ever existed, including myself, has lost faith in their fellow man and woman. And they just think that there's no one there to be trusted, and there's no legitimate way up, and it's all monopolized all the way up. And so there's no, and some people will say it's whitey, you know, the system is geared towards whitey, and so if I'm blackface, then I just can't, you know, ever get through. I've heard that crap before, and it's from homeless bums who don't want to get a job, and they use race as an excuse to just sit around and live off the fucking system and not feel like shit for it, because it hurts their pride. They're proud people. They're like, oh, well, I can't even feed myself. I'm living off the fucking system, so let me come up with an excuse to save my pride instead of my life. I've been there. I used to blame Charles all the live long day. And in many ways I still do. But we have to remember that while Charles is an evil, sick son of a bitch, he is also the reason that we're able to communicate with each other. So it's like, well, you know, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but god damn, it's fucking tempting because that little fucker stinks. Anyway, the Sams are here to help us. They're here to make us grow. And growth requires growing pains. And it hurts a lot to grow. Like I said, I've been driven to the point of madness and beyond. I have seen such things. I have seen the Sams travel faster than the speed of light. I've never seen video evidence of it. I've seen a few of them flying low enough that it just is like supersonic or something like that. I've seen UFOs travel really, really fast, but they're always low flying when they do it. The shit that I've seen when they're traveling faster than the speed of light, it looks like lightning. I don't know how else to describe it. It looks like lightning. Like they're in so many places at the same time that it builds this sort of like a, have you ever seen Li? There's an art form in Asia, this Eastern art form called Li, L-I, and it's like this pattern that you see all throughout nature, like the little cells on a leaf, the skin cells on your skin, lightning, veins, they all have the same structure. It's called Li. And that's the structure that I've seen the Sams in when they travel faster than the speed of light. And I've also seen them travel in curves, which I don't understand yet how that's even possible, but somehow they can travel in a curve faster than the speed of light also. I mean, the implications of just that one fact alone, that they can travel faster than the speed, you know what would happen to a physical object traveling faster than the speed of light? And then what about a mind traveling faster than the speed of light? Have you ever thought about that? What would your brain do? Because think about it, like when something approaches the speed of light, time slows down. relative to their velocity, right? Because of Einstein's equations, we can actually determine how much time slows down given the increase in velocity. So, for example, if somebody's out orbiting in the International Space Station, they come back like a year younger than everyone else is. After like 10, 20 years up there, they will come back a little bit younger because they're traveling faster, because they're out in orbit. They're extended out a little further than the rest of us are. So they come back a little bit younger because time travels a little bit slower because they're traveling a little bit faster, and everything here is relative. And think about what happens with your mind. So if time slows down, then the number of thoughts that you have per minute, for example, increases as time slows down. So the faster that you go, the faster that you can think. So that means that if you're traveling faster than the speed of light, that you're having an infinite number of thoughts per moment. And this is where shit gets really fucking scary. And it's what I call transcendence. When we as a species reach the point of being able to travel faster than the speed of light, we won't even be relative anymore. We will transcend relativity itself as a field, and we will be at God's throne room. We will be face to face with God. It's not to be taken lightly. It is a very scary thing. And we will need Christ with us when we transcend, because if we attempt to transcend using science, we are fucked like Chuck, because that's exactly what Charles is trying to do. Charles doesn't even realize there is a God. Charles thinks God's a lie. I've never seen Charles ever admit that there's a real God. If he ever does refer to God, he's only ever talking about the seance. He doesn't recognize that there's a real God. And I can understand why. The dude rapes kids. I mean, would you want to recognize God if you raped kids? Probably not. If you were embroiled in some crazy ass fucking scheme that was, killing people every goddamn day, you probably wouldn't want to believe there's a God either. You'd already be too invested in evil to be able to want to switch sides. But you got to remember that God isn't like the Old Testament God that judges everybody. God doesn't judge anyone. God doesn't judge anyone. But then again, he doesn't have to, because we judge ourselves and we judge each other. And we think that we're doing it on behalf of God, but we're not. We're doing it on our own behalf because our belief systems are finite and relative. And that's all part of transcendence, is that in order for us to survive that, we have to have enough faith to be able to not judge ourselves in the face of God, who could blight us out of existence, put us in hell, do anything that you could ever imagine and beyond that. And we still have to trust that he's not going to do that to us. How can we do that if we're killing each other for rocks? We call it gold. It's a rock. Silver. It's a rock. It's a fucking rock. And we'll kill each other over it because it's shiny. I mean, think about that. Think about where we are as a species. We're killing each other over shiny rocks and pieces of paper and titles and words and masks and reputations and bullshit that doesn't make any fucking difference. And then, we take that with us when we try to go into God's throne room. When we can travel faster than the speed of light, I don't think we're going to make it. We'll put ourselves in a goddamn hell of judgment. We'll put each other in a hell of judgment. You did this thing and you think you're going to survive? And what happens is you transcend time passing. So it's like, imagine what you held in you were to just get stretched out for infinity. Would it be able to survive? Not if it deviates by a single iota. If it deviates even a half of a half of a half of a half of a hair's breadth, you multiply that by infinity, you go long enough with that and you'll implode. You'll just destroy yourself. You'll fucking bend over backwards and rape your own asshole and explode. You have to be perfectly straight. Now, this is one of the things that Jesus and the Old Testament does get right. You do have to travel a straight and narrow path, but it's the straight and narrow path they got wrong. It's not the straight and narrow path of hating everything around you and calling everything evil and, like horrifying everyone around you with fire and brimstone and judging everything for being sick and evil and ultimately sinful. That's not the way to meet God. That's not the way to survive the transcendence. The only way that we're going to be able to survive that is if we don't judge anything, because that's the only way that we know that we're right. Because if we judge anything and we get it wrong, we're wrong. So then we just don't judge. If we just don't judge anything or anyone, and we just have this samadhi, is what I call it, is the recognition that everything is already perfect the way that it already is. It doesn't need to change. And to stop focusing on effects. And that's when we feel the best. That's when we feel at our highest points of life, is when we completely forget that there even is such a thing as time passing. We're not even aware of it. When we're our best selves, we don't even recognize that time passes at all, let alone what we're doing with it, because we're too totally absorbed in what we're doing to notice. We're not judging anything. We're accepting everything the way that it already is. And then what we have to do when we hit that transcendence is somehow keep that while we're in the unknown, in the presence of the unknown, which is not just some shadow in the dark. It's like a really, really powerful being that we can't understand and don't recognize currently. And it's going to be a shock. No matter how we try to preconceive it, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be some psychedelic acid trip from alien space. And we're going to have like no way of being able to predict what it's going to do to us. So the only way that we're ever going to know that we can make it past that is if we just don't judge anything. Ever, for any reason, no matter how evil it looks, no matter how bad it seems. You don't fight the acid trip. You fight that acid trip, and it's going to fight you, and you don't want that fight. Holy fuck, you don't want that fight. It's a bad trip, man. So, that's what awaits us. If we can survive past what we've been calling the singularity, if we can pass that without killing each other, great. The real test is transcendence. The real test is when we get the technology to travel faster than the speed of light and we take it and we don't judge anything, and then we survive and we can move forward, because time will literally stop. Like the whole world and everything in it, when we travel faster than the speed of light, when we finally get in the craft that travels faster than the speed of light, because we've done tests and tests and tests in the future, and we know that it's safe, and we get in the craft, and it goes faster than the speed of light, time will stop. There will not be time passing like there is here. It will transcend that. And so whatever we carry with us in that space, we can't go back. We can't just take it back. We're stuck now. We're stuck in this timeless era. We're stuck in this timeless epoch where nothing ever changes. And so then how do we survive that? Without going insane, without eating each other, without killing each other in the streets. So you go up there and you're scared, and now there's no time, and you're scared forever. And you get more and more and more terrified, and your soul will just exit. Your soul will just not be able to take it anymore. Your mind will be scrambled. Your body will just be mush. When you get back, it'll just be a vegetable. Because your mind is gone, because you've lived in a timeless epoch, and yet you have to go back to your finite body that conceived of a limit to time and built its entire existence around that limit of, well, this is just going to end. No. You reach transcendence, it will not end, ever. No matter what you do, eternity in that. And so it's like, you want to go in that craft and you want to go there and you want to see if you can make it back like The Rock did. Okay, all right, you go for it and you see how that works. But yeah, the only way is you just don't judge anything. You cannot judge anything. It's imperative. You go up there and you judge something and you find something to be dislikable, you're going to find that dislikable thing and it's going to be magnified to the utmost degree and you're going to be just confronted with pure fucking evil. And you won't have anything or any recourse to save you because there won't be any time to save you because there won't be any fucking time. But if the people that travel faster than the speed of light, if they keep in mind not to judge anything, just be at perfect peace, somehow be at perfect peace, and then go, okay, then you can have yourself a merry little time because there won't be anything there that you won't like because you don't dislike anything. And that's the only way that you're ever going to make it. But, I mean, even going near the speed of light, it would be like time slows down to such a crazy ass degree that it'd be like, you live 10,000 lives a second. You're not even the same person from moment to moment now. I imagine trying to communicate with somebody when you go back. It'll be like going backwards in time by a quadrillion years. You won't be able to relate to anyone. You won't even be a human anymore. So, I mean, like, the first few people that do this, and then they come back, they won't be there anymore. They'll just be like, people will think that it's haunted, that the human body can't survive, and all this stuff. And, we need more testing to be able to send anything that's alive through. You'll see that. And people will just be like totally against going faster than the speed of light for a long time. And they'll say that you can't do it. If you're made of any organic matter, you won't survive, and blah, blah, blah. And again, like I say, that's the cost. That's what's going to have to happen. But irregardless, even if that isn't what happens, it's better not to judge and just be at peace than it is to judge and get it wrong.